In this video, I'm going to run through all aspects of running a four-person scramble event. I will move fairly quickly through each of the procedures. If you need additional information or assistance with one particular area, please feel free to call. But to keep the video fairly short, we'll move quickly through each of the progressions. Before I open up the pairing program, I am going to open up my Excel sheet that I've been working on. I've put together a list of 32 players that will be competing in the event in four-person teams. So in column A, I have a numeric sort sequence, which I have ordered as 1, 1, 1, 1 for the first four, indicating that all players with a 1 are on a team. 2, 2, 2, 2, all players with a 2 are on a team. Column B, I use as the first name, C as a last name. I also have city, state, email, and phone number for each player. So as you can see, each row indicates a player's individual information. This is a CSV file, and I save it as a CSV file because I want to import this player information into TPP when running my event. A CSV file, if you're unfamiliar with it, when you do the save as, you'll have a type, and you could scroll down and you want to select this one that says CSV parentheses comma delimited close parentheses .csv. I'm going to close this, and I am going to close this document here as well. And now that you've seen that I have my CSV file ready for an import, I'm going to go ahead and open up my tournament pairing program, and we'll begin setting up this four-person scramble. I'm going to create a new event, and I'm going to call it the May 1st Scramble. So obviously my date to begin will be May 1st. Just an 18 holes, one round. I'll leave that as is there. My men's course, I have a lot of courses set up in my TPP. I'm going to go ahead and say we're going to play from the Blue Tees and Amana Colonies. We'll say next to that. Next window is about net information. Since this is a scramble that will have no net results or no net competition, I can leave it at none for section 3-5, and I can just go ahead and say finish. So we have 0 players in our event. So the next thing I want to do is go ahead and import my players. Players, import tournament players. I'm going to, you'll see the file, which is already looking there from a previous video I did, but you'd want to make sure that the correct file is there so you can browse out. I kept this CSV file on my desktop, so I would locate that May 1, 2014 scramble.csv file and say open. Then it will be in your file extension there. I'm going to edit the wizard and say next, and I want to make sure that each column is properly labeled for my field types. You can see I have skip for the numeric sort sequence that we talked about, the 1s for team 1 and the 2s for team 2 and so forth. I don't want that to be a skip. I want to use that, and there is a sort sequence 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we'll just use sort sequence 1. All other columns should be already appropriately named. I can just give it a quick check. First name is right, last name, city, state, emails look good, and phone numbers are properly identified as well. If one of them was not, simply click on the column, and then you'll have the drop down to change it to whatever that data is. But once that all looks correct, go ahead and say finish, and then we can say OK. And all of our info will be imported in. We now have 32 individuals in this event, and I can check that out by going to Players and Tournament Player Management, and you'll see a list of all of our players. Now they do have an entry number here that we see. Right now it's showing our players in alphabetical order. It looks by first name. And you can see that I have 3 players that I do not know their names of yet. So what I did on the sheet is I put their team number and TBD for both first and last names. So teams 1, 2, and 8 each had a player to be determined, and the reason I put a number in there is to give them a little unique identification, not just doing TBD for everybody. I put the team number in there as well. But you can click on the name or the entry number here, and you'll see a little arrow pointing up. I could click on it, the arrow would point down, and then it's going to sort them by last name. On the show, we could also do our numeric sort sequence now, and you'll see that it's going to put them in order by their team numbers. And I could click that and change it, and instead of going from 1, 2, 3, 4, we'd go the reverse way, 8, 7, 6. So you can sort them in that way as well. A lot of ways we can go through and click on each individual and see. We could update any information we had as well. For example, on the players we know, I put in city, state, email, and all that. For a player to be determined, I did not put in the city and the state because I don't know who they are yet. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And now that we have our individuals in, we need to comprise our teams for this scramble event. So I'm going to go to Teams, Create, Remove Teams. And you can create your teams in a number of ways. For this, I'm going to say 4 players per team. And I am going to choose, for my creation method, my numeric sort sequence. I'm going to say Build. This is a team setting window. If we had any handicap or net competition, we would apply accordingly. What we don't, so I can just say OK there, and it'll tell me 8 teams have been built. And just like players had a tournament player management, we can go Teams and Management and take a look at our teams that are formed. We'll see we have 8 rows for 8 teams. That looks correct. And I can check and see that my teams are in the correct order as well, because over here on the show I am showing numeric sort sequence 1, and that just means that behind every player's name, what is showing in the parenthesis is the numeric sort sequence. So 1, 1, 1, 1 looks correct because that's the 4 members of the team. 2 for Phil Mickelson, a player to be determined, and Ben Crenshaw and Sam Snead comprise Team 2. So everything looks good there, and now we can move forward. If we hear from Team 2 and they say we have the name of our player, we don't have to re-import anything. We can simply go to our tournaments, our players, tournament player management, find the player to TBD, and change his name, and we find out his name is Roger Jones. We click Save. We can check, going back into Teams and Management, and you'll see that Roger Jones is now in that place. We didn't add a player or anything, we just renamed. Think of it as a spelling error. We spelled Roger Jones's name incorrectly when we imported him in. We spelled it as 2 TBD for first name when it should have been Roger. So think of it that way. It knows to what team that player's on, and it keeps the spot. And we still have a couple of TBDs which we can update as we get closer to the event. Okay, next we want to go ahead and we're going to skip flights. We're not going to do any flights until after our event's done. But we need to make our pairings next. We need to tell these players when they're going to go out and play golf. I'm going to choose Create Stroke Play Pairings, the first option under Pairings. And we can see that round 1 is there. I don't have any other options. This is just a 1-round event. And the golf course is the one we selected in our basic setup. Teams per group is 1. Is correct. We can pair them in a lot of different ways, including a random or even a manual. And I'm going to do a manual for this example. I'm going to go down here to this row and change the starting time. I'm going to click in there, change my cursor to 12 o'clock p.m. Right now it says a starting time or a starting tee of the first tee on 10-minute intervals, but this is going to be a shotgun for our example. So clicking in there, I can choose shotgun. Go ahead and say build. Because it's a shotgun, we're going to have the wave shotgun group assignments. It knows we have 8 groups, and it wants to allocate a group on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 of our golf course. I would prefer to do it a little differently. I'm going to change it. I don't want any groups to start on holes 2 through 8. So what I'm going to do is change that. Instead, I'm going to put 2 groups on 1, and then I'm going to put a group on 18, a group on 17, 16, 15, 14, and 13. That way, as soon as the group that starts on 13 clears the first tee, my tee is open for other play on the day. And we know I can choose OK now because the group current of 8 matches the groups of 8. I'll say OK to that. And it tells me that 8 pairing groups have been created for round 1. I'm going to say OK, and it's automatically going to open up in the pairings management window. I can close that and just show you about pairings management. And it automatically opens up because in the pairing method I chose manual, meaning I have a bullpen, if you will, of all my teams over here, and I need to click and drag who's starting where. And you can see on the left there of this row, each team will see that they're starting on what hole. So, for example, my McElroy, Stewart, Pavin, and Els team are my 1A team, 1B, 13A, 14A, and on down the line. We can go ahead and right-click on any of the groups as well over here to the left in the shaded area. Maybe I decided I don't want a 1B group. I'd rather have them be 12A. So I can right-click, and I have a lot of information, including insert pairing groups or add a pairing group, reset a time. What I want to do is reassign starting time /T. 12 o'clock is still correct because it's a shotgun event. Their current tee is 1B, but their new tee is going to be 12A. I'll say OK to that. Now you can see I've changed where the team of Casper, Morris, McDowell, and a player to be determined for their team will start. They're going to now start in the 12th hole. I'll apply that, say OK. So let's go ahead and run a pairings report now. Report menu is what we'll select. We'll go to the pairings subfolder. In one round, we can see we have quite a few reports to choose from here. Anything with a blue icon means it's a report that is automatically included in the tournament pairing program. Anything with a red icon means it's a custom report that you've created within your program. I see a shotgun 4 to 5 person city only report. Looks pretty good by the description of it. As you click on it here, it is going to allow you to click run. We'll say OK. You'll see the progress report go along the bottom here for building the report info. Give it just a moment. Okay, and we see our starting report. We've got the event name at the top. It's got the shotgun starting time of 12 p.m. and then we can see our hole assignments. 1A, the 4 players, the cities they're from, and that's drawing from the info we imported in. I could go ahead and print this. I could export it as a PDF if I wanted to email it out to my participants beforehand. I'm going to close. One other report we might want to run prior to the event would be cart signs. And they are also under the pairings folder, but they have their own subfolder. Let's just go ahead and run a basic cart signs report standard. It says starting time and tee. We'll run it. Before I click OK and see the final report of this, I'm going to choose assign players to carts and just make sure everybody is checked to a cart here, so they'll all be included in this report, which is what I want. We'll say OK. Watch the progress bar come across. And we can see our cart signs here. And at the top here we see this is one of 8 total pages I'm going to zoom out so I can see the entire sheet. It is spec'd out for an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, so you can go ahead and cut it down the middle. So you'll have 2 cart signs per sheet. And we can flip through and see that they're all going to be 12 p.m. starting times. Obviously, it's a shotgun start, but it's going to give you the corresponding people in the cart and the starting hole. Now, for example, we know this is a team because we did 1 team per hole. We know Phil and Roger and Ben and Sam are a team. And the way it's assigning to a cart is players 1 and 2 ride together, players 3 and 4. So I could close this out, go back to team management, and if Phil and Roger did not want to ride together, Phil wanted to ride with Ben, I could change Roger and Ben, switch them there, so when I went back and run this cart report again, it would give me Phil and Ben on cart 1 and Roger and Sam on cart 2. Just something to keep in mind there. I'll save the changes as is. And another quick report you might want to think about running at your club prior to the event would be an alpha report. Back in the report menu. This would be something for behind the counter. We'll go ahead and obtain this also through our pairings in one round. And starters list alphabetical. It's the very first report there. Let's run that. Say OK. As I said, this report isn't going to be something you're going to share with others necessarily. It's going to be more for staff. When golfers contact you and want to know what hole they're starting on, you can quickly find out by asking what their last name is, and we'll see the corresponding starting hole. So here's an example of that report. So we can see it's sorted alphabetically by last name. This works well as a check-in sheet as well. Maybe you have a column over here when they come in and pay for their carts. You can just highlight them or check them off. It's easier to find them alphabetically by last name than it is sorting through what starting hole they're going to begin for the day. So those are a few reports you can run prior to your event. One other thing, we could run scorecards for the event. And we have maybe just a standard team card. 1T. Go ahead and maybe we'll look at our drop-down menu. I'm going to shade the starting hole in a yellow, something real visible and bright. We'll find our color that we want. There's a yellow. And let's go ahead and just run this and see what it looks like. Okay, so we have our team name up here, our individuals on the team. It's got their starting hole and then shaded hole 1. You'll see that it's recalling Team 5 and Team 8 on the first page of our cards. Again, as I zoom out a little bit, this is again is an 8.5 by 11 sheet. This is now in the landscape view, but you can cut these in half, so 1 sheet of paper or cardstock will get you 2 cards. If you wanted to change the team name to something different than just their standard number, we could close this, go to Teams, and there's a rename teams. Instead of being Team 1, Team 2, etc., we can click over in here, and I could say, I could give the last name of the first person, maybe they're the captain. Let's go McElroy. I believe Team 8 was the other one. We'll go Team Casper and Team McElroy. I won't rename each one of them. I'll apply that and say OK. So when I rerun my cards, now you can see that the team name is changed in there. We still name all 4 individuals up top here, but the team name has changed. So it's time to send them out and play golf, and when they come back in, we're ready to enter the scorecards in for scoring. So we'll choose stroke play scoring. Round 1 is correct. I don't want individual hole by hole, though. I want a team hole by hole, because obviously they're playing a scramble here. Team hole by hole. Team scoring method is manual. That's what I want. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. I'm going to get a list of all of our teams in the event, and I'm going to go ahead and give each team some scores here. And our last team to come in. I can close this, and now I can go to the report menu, and we can run some reports based on our results. We can go to scoring. It was a single round event, and it was a team event. Not team flighted because we don't have any flights yet. And there's a lot of different types of reports we can run here. Let's take a look at the first one here, a gross hole-by-hole report. We'll run that. Scoring method, change that back to manual because that's how we had the setting when we entered them in. And we'll generate the report. And we can see team 1 was our low team of the day with a 63, and it shows the hole-by-hole scores for each team. Puts them in order. We didn't have a tie for first, second, or third. We did have a three-way tie for fourth. It looks like maybe even more because this is a two-page report. Nope, just a three-way tie for fourth. Let's close this. Oftentimes we do want to run flights after they come in. We'll run 2 flights for this event. So I'm going to go to Flights, Create Remove Flights by Teams, and the creation size, or the creation method, excuse me, will be the sum of the gross scores and the size of the flights. Actually, I'm going to go up above a number of flights. I know I want 2 flights by sum of gross scores. Build. Do we want to tie break this? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to do it by return sequence. I'll say OK. 2 flights have been built. There's a management for flights, just like there's a management for every other header there, and we can check that out. And we can see that in my first flight, I have a 63, 5, 6, and 167. And then on flight 2, I have a 67, 67, 68, and 71. I can rename these flights by clicking here. We'll call this our championship flight. I'll say OK. I'll rename this flight my presidential flight. I'll say OK. We're not locked into who's in each flight. We can switch around a little bit from here. If we wanted this team to be in the other flight, we could drag them and drop them over in the insert here portion of it if we wanted to do that. And also another note to take to be aware of. In flight management, you're only going to see 2 flights on the right here. If I had created more than 2 flights in a drop down, I'd see all of the flights and I can just select what flight I want to see from there. So you're always going to see 2 of them, and then the other flights are in the background, if you will. Because our example here only has 2 flights, we get to see both of them of our event. So I can go ahead and say OK to that. Now we can go back to our report menu and run a scoring report, but this time we're going to do a scoring single round team flighted report. And we're going to choose the exact same report we ran before. Again, make sure scoring method is manual in there. Go ahead and say OK. And now we are going to get the same report, but it's page break by our flights. And you can see at the top here, we have a championship flight, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then if I click to my next page, I have the presidential flight, and we had a 2-way tie for first in the presidential flight Team 3 and Team 4, rounding it out. So it's the same report, but it does page break it by flights and then starts over with your positions within those flights and not overall. One last thing we'll cover here would be skins. That's a popular thing to run in a scramble event. We didn't set it up in the beginning here. That's no problem. I can go back to teams and we can do assign teams to skins. And let's just go ahead and you'll click whoever is in the Team Skins game. For this example, we're going to say all of them were except Team 7. They didn't want to be in it, which is fine. This is just round 1. You can see your count over here. You have 7 teams in the gross skins. We'll apply that. Close. We've already done all our scoring, so we can just go into reports and run a report that will show us which teams won a skin on what holes. It's under the scoring subfolder of skins, and we want a team report. We're not having individual skins in this competition. I'm going to go ahead and let's run this one here. It's going to show, according to the name of it, it's going to show both net and gross results. We won't have any net results because we don't have that in part of our competition set up. But when we run our report, you can see we had quite a few skins go out. Now obviously the right side's net, and we can just disregard that. On the first hole, we had a skin go out. It went to the team of Tom Watson, Ben Hogan, Tiger, and their player to be named later. It shows the score they made. If there was a tie on a hole, it's just left blank. So we can go through here and count that we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 skins go out total, and the remainder of the holes were ties. Okay, that's a quick run through of setting up a 4-person scramble. You can see we put our players in, we made our pairings, we ran reports prior to, including pairings. We showed you how to run some scorecards for them, how to score it, and then run reports accordingly afterwards, including create flights if you had flights in your event. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact the IGA staff at any time.